Here we go again with another episode of the Regular Guy Vikings Hour. Welcome back. I am the Regular Guy. And thank you so much for being here. I mean, how exciting are these times, right? The Vikings are 2-0, heading into a big matchup with the Texans, which looks like it's going to be pretty awesome. And I honestly can't wait for the game. So, with that said, what I want to do is just once again say thank you for coming by to check me out. And please, if you like the content, then please give me a thumbs up and a subscription. I'm still struggling in that department. I'm hoping to gain a little bit more traction. So I'm just going to keep posting videos and just keep speaking my mind and talking Vikings. And hopefully, eventually, some people will start to come by. I will at some point start to get involved with some other forms of social media and maybe even try and do some YouTube shorts or maybe even some lives, but that kind of stuff is still a little bit out of my range right now. For now, I'm just posting hour-long YouTube videos, so I hope you guys enjoy. And so this show in particular, this is nothing but a Vikings-Texans preview show, okay? And so we're just going to go through this step by step and get you ready for the game, okay? And the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to bring up my spreadsheet, okay? And on my spreadsheet here, the first thing we're going to talk about is the game elevations, and I'm going to predict kind of who I think is going to be active and inactive for the game. Okay, so as you can see here, there's been a little bit of roster movement. Let's just get started right there. We know that Nick Muse. I don't know what kind of injury he got, but he's going to be on short-term IR. So he's been added to the short-term IR. He's going to miss 4 games, so he's on there with Reisner and Murphy. Reisner and Murphy still have 2 more games to go, whereas Muse has 4 that he's got to miss. And just a couple little small end of the roster moves they made. They brought in a guy named Tooley. I forget his first name. He's a linebacker. I believe he was an undrafted free agent this year. He actually was with the Texans before, and now he's with us. And then we brought in another offensive lineman, and we moved out Ricky Lee. I put a little note: Ricky Lee, we hardly knew ye, right? We didn't really find out much about the guy. But again, this is into the roster stuff, so it's like, what does it matter? So anyway, the new guy's name is Marcellus Johnson. I don't know anything about it, but I updated the practice squad. So Tooley and Marcellus Johnson are on the practice squad now. So, and the reason why we only had to remove 1 guy and we added 2 in was because obviously Muse went to short-term IR. Miles Gaskin actually got moved up to the 53, which was going to happen eventually anyway because you only get 3 elevations this season. So this would have been his 3rd elevation. So we would have needed to have moved him to the 53 this week anyway. Okay, so getting to the elevations this week, this is a super, super interesting week. A little bit different. The 2 elevations we're going to get this week are Robert Tonyan and Bo Richter. Bo Richter, the choice over Andre Carter, which honestly I'm fine with because Richter looked great in preseason. Tonyan, I'm kind of looking forward. I talk about him a little bit later and how he might be kind of an interesting piece of this game. He obviously takes Nick Muse's spot on the roster. I'm actually kind of hoping that he steals some snaps from Johnny Munt. So we'll see how it goes. So those are 2 guys who are going to be elevated. They will be playing. They will be dressing. They'll be part of our 48/49, right? So as we've talked about before, Rippin is technically our 49th guy. He's the emergency QB3. Then we have some really interesting injuries that kind of cropped up this week, right? Jordan Addison's going to miss his 2nd game. We're going to miss him, but he needs to be healthy, right? As somebody stated on another show earlier this week, you need ankles to play receiver. So let's just get him healthy, and then he'll be back 100%, and the offense will be rolling at that point. Plus, we're really close to getting Hawk back, so all these supreme skill position guys that we have, they're going to be all back together, and I think the offense will really be humming. Another injury that kind of cropped up was Dallas Turner. We knew he hurt his knee in the 49er game. I think maybe he was a DNP or limited kind of early in the week, and eventually they just said he's out. So I think Dallas, his presence will be missed a little bit, but he really hasn't been getting a ton of snaps. He's been kind of rotating in just a little bit, maybe getting anywhere from like 10 to 15, maybe even as high as 20 snaps a game. So his impact hasn't really been felt a lot. They've actually been dropping him into coverage a little bit, which I thought was interesting. He did have the one sack in the first game. But I think I really love, obviously, we're talking about a first-round draft pick, perhaps the best, edge rusher coming out of the draft, and then Bo Richter, a guy who was an undrafted free agent out of Air Force. But I really, really loved what I saw out of Bo in the preseason. He brings a lot of energy and a lot of juice onto the field. And so if Bo does get a chance to mix in, I'm really excited to see what Bo can do for this game. And then just another injury that cropped up. This one maybe caught people by surprise. I think he was more of like a limited participant throughout the week, but Ivan Pace Jr. is going to miss this game. He obviously got nicked up in that 49er game. I did notice he played a lot more snaps. I did notice he didn't quite look the same. He was missing some tackles, and so maybe there was something to that. So let's just get Ivan healthy. Although I will talk about this later, we're going to miss him in this game, and I'm really interested to see how the defensive formations are going to look without him in the lineup. So those are obvious, right? Rippon, the QB3, Addison, Turner, Pace, they're all out. That leaves, what do we got? Just 3 more spots for guys who will not be playing tomorrow. I think Walter Rouse is a pretty obvious choice. Walter hasn't dressed the first 2 games. I think, again, we'll carry 8 offensive linemen. We have Questenberry to play both right and left tackle in a pinch, so Rouse will be out. And then Jalen Redmond, I think, will probably also not dress simply because in this scenario, they did have to choose between one of the 2 defensive linemen who are available to play, and I just think LDR is going to be the choice over Jalen. And then finally, this one was kind of a tough choice simply because I was looking at the Vikings depth chart on Vikings.com, and I did see that Fabian Moreau is technically higher on the depth chart than Dwight McGlothern. And that's too bad. We'll see if they actually do it, but I got to say there's going to be a ton of excitement about our young guys if we actually have Richter, LDR, and McGlothern all playing their first game tomorrow. That would be really awesome. But my own personal prediction, I think McGlothern will probably sit and not dress for this one. So there you have it. So that's my prediction for tomorrow, the guys who will and will not play. Next up, we're going to talk about the Texans. We're going to transition back to main cam. Okay, I got a lot to say about the Texans, man. I did some recon on these guys. I looked at data. I looked at stats. I rewatched their first 2 games, not completely, but enough. And so right out of the gate, I always kind of want to get this out of the way before I talk about players. I want to talk about their offensive coordinator. His name is Bobby Slowick. He's in his 2nd year in Houston with D'Amico Ryans. D'Amico brought him over when he got hired. They both were with the 49ers prior to that. Something really interesting about Bobby Slowick is that he actually worked for PFF as an analyst between 2014 and 2016. I don't know if I've ever seen that in any football coach's history when I've gone to look them up on Wikipedia. I mean, it's not like I'm looking at every guy, but that's the first time I've seen that. So you definitely got a guy coming from an analytics background, which I just thought was super, super interesting. So like I mentioned, he was with Ryans in San Francisco before, came over with him when he got hired for the Texans job. And here's kind of like another unknown guy. You don't really know what to expect from him. He's still young. He kind of worked his way up, just like that defensive coordinator for the 49ers last year. But you do have to give him some props for just the development of Stroud and the development of the passing game and the receivers. And so I think that so far so good for Slowick. We'll see how he matches up with Flores in this game. Okay. Now, before I talk about C.J. Stroud, I do want to kind of mention Brian Flores here, Coach Flo, because I think that Flores in this matchup is going to play a little bit of a cat and mouse game with Slowick and Stroud, because I think that both Slowick and Stroud, as kind of like a team putting together that offense, I think they use a lot of film study, and I think that they really want to understand what they're going to be looking at when they go into the game, and they want to be able to get pre-snap reads. And I think that Flores knows that he's going against that. He's going against a couple of kind of bookworm type guys who are going to try and maybe figure out Flores before the game starts, and I think that Flores is going to try and use that against them and play a real cat and mouse game in this matchup, and so I really can't wait for that. I think the Houston offense against the Vikings defense is going to be probably the most fun football that we get to watch tomorrow. Okay, so on to CJ Stroud. I mean, this guy, he's basically all you can ask for in a quarterback, right? I mean, he's got the size, he's got the athleticism, he's got the smarts, he's got the arm. He can get out and run when he needs to. I remember when the draft was happening and people were talking about him and kind of trying to make him sound as if he wasn't smart enough to be a quarterback. They were kind of alluding to it anyway. And he's proven all the doubters wrong. He's plenty smart for this. He has such a great work ethic. I mean, to be the leader of your team and to be a young QB on a team that's kind of on the rise, you really couldn't ask for anything more than a guy like CJ Stroud. So they have a lot to be excited about in Houston. So what I've noticed about CJ through his first 2 games in this season is that he's been helped out quite a bit by the run game. Mixon has been really, really good so far, but he's out for this game, along with Pierce is also out for this game. I noticed, so it's going to be, if I just come down here to, it's Akers and it's Agumbawale. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Those are going to be probably your 2 lead tailbacks in this game. They called up a couple of guys from the practice squad. I don't know anything about those guys. I don't even know if they'll get snaps or if they'll have any kind of impact on the offense. But when Stroud is helped out by a good run game and he has clean pockets, I mean, he understands coverages. He sees progressions. He knows what he's looking at. He can be lethal. So you want to stay away from allowing the Texans to have a good, strong running game and for him to have clean pockets throughout the game because he'll dice us apart, honestly. We are very fortunate, though, to be facing them without Mixon and Pierce because that really hurts them in the run game. They aren't, I don't think, a particularly great offensive line, which I will get to. And so although Akers and I'll just call him O for the remainder of the show, I think they're good NFL running backs, but I don't think they're anywhere near the talent of Mixon and Pierce. So I think we're really fortunate for that to have happened. Next up, I did notice something about Stroud, and that is, much like any quarterback in the league, honestly, but he is bothered by pressure. He does notice the pressure. He reacts to the pressure. And when it arrives, I think that although he is capable of improv plays and he does have improv skills, sometimes he showed to be just a tick too late on some of those on those moments when he was making a decision whether or not to try to stick it out in the pocket and move around or get out and make some kind of an improv play. So I think maybe he's still learning in that regard. And so I think, and that's understandable. He's barely into his second year, but I just think if we can get pressure on him, we can force him into some situations where he has to make decisions, and hopefully it creates, opportunistic moments for us, whether it be turnovers or sacks or something like that. Now, when he does get into those improv moments, though, when he does get outside the pocket, maybe he can run. He's very capable of running. He's got plenty of quickness, and he's also a really good thrower of the football on the move. I mean, we saw a couple of really nice throws in both games where he was moving out to his right and just threw some darts right down the sideline. But I think all in all, Stroud definitely works on trying to remain in the pocket. I think he much prefers to play within the pocket. He's definitely more of a structure guy, in my opinion. Have a little bit of not cider, but seltzer, I guess, alcoholic seltzer. I'm actually more of a beer guy. I've drank beer my entire life, but I'm 46 now, and so it's like you can't drink beer forever. And I was actually a little bit like, what, when those alcoholic seltzers came out and the low calorie beers came out, I was like, forget that noise. I'm a beer guy. But you get a little older, you got to start, watching it and cutting your calories. So I'm drinking seltzer now. So it is what it is. All right. So as we talked about, I'm still on CJ Stroud, right? A lot to talk about with this guy. He is a plus athlete. Again, plenty athletic, big arm. He can make all the throws that you could possibly want. I mean, if you need the long ball, if you need something like a dart over the middle or something on the sideline, like across the field, he can make all those throws. And he's pretty darn accurate down the field too, so watch out for that. Now, like I was saying before, he couples his physical abilities with a really strong work ethic. He studies a lot. He's really good in the film room, and that allows him to make really good in-game decisions. He makes really good pre-snap reads. And this is where I think Flores is really going to need to play around and be tricky to kind of like make Stroud question what he's seeing in the game. Because if you can just make Stroud just hesitate just enough, get enough pressure in his face, I think you can force him into some mistakes. So I'm really looking forward to see how that works out. So on to the receivers. This is probably the best receiving group that we quite possibly will see all year. Number one, of course, you have Nico Collins, who I think is coming into his third year now. He's essentially ascending to be one of the best wide receivers in the entire league. I mean, he's definitely going to be the best receiver, in my opinion, that we're going to see to this point in the year. He makes contested catches. He gets yak. And he, I think, runs the entire route tree. So he can move all over the field. He can be really difficult to defend. I think he has great hands too. So Nico Collins, he's going to be a tough matchup for us in this one. And so I'm worried, but we'll see. Stephon Diggs, I mean, we know Stephon. He in his own right is a great receiver. He's over 30 now. But here's the thing about Stephon. He is reliable. He runs really tight routes. He has great hands, and he can be serious trouble in the middle of the field between the hashes. Just picking up first downs, bouncing off tackles, getting yak. And so I really think Byron Murphy Jr. is going to have his hands full in this game if he is kind of designated to be on Stephon one-on-one for the entire game. So I really hope that Coach Flo has something cooked up for that, because I would really hate to see Stephon just burning Murphy all game long. Although I think that, obviously, I think Byron is at his best in the slot. So it'll be a good matchup, I think. Couple of good veteran players going at each other. So Tank Dell, he's kind of their number 3. He really doesn't get a ton of targets. He's kind of more of like a big play guy. And when I was what I had been hearing was that he was a fast player, and then I went back and I looked at his 40-yard at the Combine a couple years ago, and it was only a 4.49, which isn't considered that fast for a receiver like him. But I think what it is that he's field fast. He's in the pads fast. And I think that really does matter, because it's like some guys maybe aren't as fast just like, running in shorts. And then when they put the pads on, suddenly you see that speed. And I think he's one of those guys. So we really need to watch out for him in particular. We have kind of an older secondary. They might throw out some sneaky double moves with that guy. I know they like to run some end arounds and some jet sweeps with him. So he's a guy that they're really going to try and utilize. I think maybe on a handful of plays are going to try and utilize his speed, so it's definitely something to watch out for. And then just a couple of their bottom of the wide receiver depth chart guys. They have like Hutchinson, who I think came on a couple of years ago. I really liked him coming out. He's a really big guy. I think he's probably going to get utilized like in the red zone or come in on blocking plays and stuff like that. He's a pretty decent prospect. And then they've still got Robert Woods there, who's just kind of a savvy vet. You could probably look for him to come in on like third downs and try and make some crucial catches to convert into first downs. It's kind of like our Brandon Powell in a way, but older. Okay, so on to the tight ends. This one I thought was kind of interesting, was that Dalton Schultz is technically their starter. But I think at this point, after signing that free agent contract coming over from, I believe, the Cowboys, I don't really think he's played up to the contract, and I think maybe he's kind of living on name recognition. I've talked about guys on name recognition in other games, other game previews, and I think Schultz is another guy like that, where it's like, oh no, Dalton Schultz, what a name, but he's really at this point just kind of a mediocre tight end. The guy I think we should really watch out for is this young guy coming up, Brevin Jordan, who I think's been in the league for just 2 or 3 years now. He's the one to look out for. I think he could be a real weapon for them, just in short yardage and just running down that seam, and kind of making big plays just over the head of the linebacker. And I mean, when you consider the fact that Pace is out for this game, and God knows who's going to be in the game. If it's Asamoah, I'm going to be like beside myself. But if we have guys like Metellus or Harrison Smith on them, we might be okay. But Brevin Jordan, I think is a guy we really need to watch out for in this one. So they've got obviously plenty of offensive talent at the skill positions, and again, frankly, we are lucky that Joe Mixon's not in this game, so that worked out for us. So I talked about the running backs already, but it's Akers, it's O looks like a little bit more of a smaller guy, more of a third down back type. And we know Akers, right? We saw him last year. He's a guy who he can definitely be spry and have his moments. I mean, we obviously wanted him back. I think he would have fit in really nicely in our running back room. But he went to Houston, and now he's getting his chance to kind of be the number one again, at least for 1 week. But I think his workhorse days are behind him. I think at best he's a committee guy, and so I think in this one, at best, he'll be splitting carries, but that helps keep him fresher. So we'll see how the running game goes for them, but I have a good feeling that we're going to hold up. So just moving on to the offensive line, They have a pretty decent center. Again, another young guy that they drafted a couple years ago, Juice Scruggs. And I know he's coming into this game questionable, but I did happen to notice that his direct backup, Patterson, is actually out for the game. So I would really see Juice Scruggs most likely playing. In addition to the fact that they called up 2 running backs from the practice squad and not an offensive lineman, specifically a center. So it looks to me pretty obvious that Juice Scruggs will be playing, but maybe not at 100%. So we'll see how it goes. Okay. Their tackles are Tunsil and Howard, and they're solid. Their combination is solid. I'll give them that. But for me, I don't think that it's anything to be worried about. I think that Laramie Tunsil, as a talent at tackle, is probably on par with our Brian O'Neill, except in this case, Laramie Tunsil is actually their most important tackle. He is their left tackle, protecting the blind side, okay? He's probably about the 20th to 25th best tackle in the league, something like that. Definitely a guy you can still beat, okay? So I don't think that Laramie's just going to shut down anybody on the day. I think he can be had. Okay, so the tackle on the other side, his last name is Howard. He plays, let's see, he's average to below average. That's really the only note I have on him. I think he might be kind of another young guy, maybe, that they drafted just in the last couple of years, but I'd have to go back and double check that. But again, that's a guy I think on the opposite side, whether it be Van Ginkel or Grenard or Pat Jones, who I'm like, hey, Pat, keep the momentum going, right? I think that these tackles can be had. So then, even without being really impressed by the center or the tackles, the guards are actually the weakest part of the offensive line. Shaq Mason and Green are both below average guys. I mean, bottom of the league guys. Shaq is a vet. Green is still only 23. He's young. He's a former first rounder who just hasn't blossomed yet. And they were both exposed in the Bears game, and the Bears have a pretty good defensive line, so I think we can expose them as well, which kind of gives credence to the fact that I don't really think they're going to run the ball that well. But again, the proof's going to be in the pudding, right? Okay, so on to the kicker. I think it's Kyer Fairbairn, right? He is one of the best kickers in the league, at least at this point. And I actually, when I kind of done some free agent predictions before free agency started earlier in the year, I had Fairbairn targeted as a guy that I wanted the Vikings to go after. I mean, I would have paid him probably $6 million a year, which I think would have made him like the second or third highest paid kicker in the league, because I felt like he was that good, and he's continuing to prove it. But the Texans were smart. They actually re-signed him before the free agency tampering period began, which bummed me out. But now we have Will Reichard, and I feel much better about that. So it worked out for both of us. But I think that Fairbairn, if they even get within maybe like the 35, 40-yard line, look out for this guy to kill us on some long kicks. So he's a weapon for them. Just one last offensive note in terms of the Texans is that they've only turned the ball over one time so far, just one giveaway compared to our 4. But at the same time, they have allowed 7 sacks on Stroud, and so as you know, we lead the league in sacks with 11. So I think we're going to get some sacks. I mean, probably not as many as 6 as we got against the 49ers, but you never know. So I think at least 3. I'm feeling at least 3. Okay. All right. Moving on to the defensive side of the ball for the Texans. The first thing I noticed was that 8 out of 16 guys on their defense are actually 28 years or older. This defense is lots of veterans, which, makes them a little smarter, a little savvy, but also kind of old. But then, in addition to that, they're playing a ton of snaps too. So 8 out of 16 guys who are playing snaps are 28 or older. It's a collection of veterans, and I just feel like they have an opportunity to maybe wear down as the game progresses. Starting with the defensive line, you've got Fatukasi and Mario Edwards. They play on the inside. And they're going to play about 2/3 of the snaps, at least if the first 2 games are any indicator. And the thing that I found really interesting was that Mario Edwards only weighs 280 pounds. So in my opinion, that's a guy you can take advantage of on the inside in the run game. You do some inside runs, push that guy around, get to the second level, and then some. And then both guys are 29 years old, so there you go. They're a little bit older too, so we'll see. So the second level of that interior defensive line are a guy named Davis and then Tim Settle. Kind of journeyman type guys. Settle actually had a really good start to his career with Washington, signed a nice free agent contract with Buffalo, kind of flamed out there, and he's just kind of been bouncing around, and now he's over here trying to, I guess, recoup his career with the Texans as a backup. So Hey, we'll see if it goes anywhere. But all in all, the second tier of the interior defensive line also doesn't really scare me. Okay, so on the edge, obviously you have Daniil Hunter, you have Will Anderson, right? The what was he, like the third or fourth pick overall in last year's draft? Might have been defensive rookie of the year. I don't quite remember, but that's probably the best edge combo we're going to that we've probably seen so far this year. Because obviously we saw Bosa last week, who's the best in the league, but the guy opposite him was just a veteran, Leonard Floyd, who didn't do nothing in the game. And then the combo we saw before that was Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns, who again kind of like name guys, but this duo is better. They consistently win reps. They're just kind of like more of a slow and steady kind of winners on their pass rushes. So they're going to eventually get there. It's just a matter of Darnold making sure to get the ball out of his hand on time and not allow them to continue to work and eventually get by our guys. Let me highlight that whole thing so I can see it. Had a lot here. Anderson's a bit more explosive, obviously. I mean, he's younger, right? He plays with more fire, more passion. Hunter just plays kind of smart. He's really good with gap integrity because he does care about playing the run as well. We saw that with his time at the Vikings. He's just a good, smart veteran player who can also win in the pass rush and plays the run really well. So that's going to make it harder to run to his side, in my opinion. Which I actually think is going to work out okay because I feel like we're a much stronger running team going to the left with Darisaw and Brandell. So when it comes to Anderson's kind of like youthful aggression, as I would call it, it's something that I think you could probably expose. I talked about that about Bosa last week with the 49ers in that he's just a guy who's really into getting his pass rush going, right, and getting those sacks and those numbers. And so I think with these guys who are really kind of sack hungry, I think you can really take advantage of their aggression. And so I just think, again, I think that the left side is going to be our best side to really exploit and run the ball toward. So look for a big day from our running backs, and Darisaw and Brandell really bringing it. Okay, and then your backups over here on the edge are Derek Barnett and 36-year-old Jerry Hughes. Really, they're recognizable names, but really nothing to be. I put here. I don't think they're going to pose much of a threat. I think that our tackles can easily handle those guys when they come in to spell Anderson and Hunter. Okay, and then right. So I talked about how let's expose the left side. Let's use their aggressiveness against them. There is one thing I do want to talk about, which don't get me wrong, D'Amico Ryans. He is a clever and intuitive defensive mind, right? I think he understands that if he's just going to put Anderson on Darisaw all day and Hunter goes up against O'Neal all day, I think over the course of the game, his guys are going to lose those matchups. I just think that our guys are a little bit better than his guys. So I think he's going to be a little bit tricky, and I think they're going to run a lot of stunts. I think they're going to run a lot of blitzes, maybe like two guys coming in behind each other, that kind of stuff. They're going to force our offensive line to communicate and switch properly. So he's going to be proactive and bring that to the Vikings and force them to make the plays. So then when you switch off, then you have mismatches going in the Texans' favor, where once before you had Hunter going against O'Neal, now you have Hunter maybe going up against, coming in and getting a pass rush rep against a guy like Ingram or Bradbury, or on the opposite side, somebody like Will Anderson coming to the inside and getting a pass rush rep against Brandell. So I think look for Ryans to try and create mismatches along our offensive line, force our guys to communicate. So they're going to really need to be on their toes in this game, okay? And then just to kind of continue that thought, So really the only other thing that I haven't mentioned is just I really think highly of Al-Shaair, their linebacker. I think he's really good on blitzes, and so that's another guy you really got to watch out for, just coming off the edge or splitting the gaps in the middle or whatever it may be. So we just are, again, the offensive line needs to be on their toes in this one. Okay, so At linebacker, I just talked about Alshire. That's another guy I really pointed at in free agency that I really wanted. Obviously, we ended up going with Cashman, which I'm not disappointed in. He's been really good so far. I loved Alshire because he's a sideline to sideline guy, very active, really good in coverage, really good in blitz, blitz packages and pass rushing. He is going to be all over the field, and he's going to be pretty ferocious. So watch out for Alshire. Um, I guess the way you pronounce this guy's name is 2020, which is actually kind of funny, right? Because it's a 2-0 team going against a 2-0 team. So there you go. It's kind of serendipitous. I think maybe the book on him coming out of the draft, I think it maybe even was this year, if I'm remembering correctly, was that he was kind of slow, kind of a plotter at linebacker. But I think that he's kind of proven to be just a little bit more quick than that. Now, I don't think that he's good in coverage, but he's definitely a tackling machine, and I think that he knows how to play the run. And so I think this is a guy who, at the very least, isn't going to make a ton of mistakes, and he's going to be out there. He could get a TFL here and there. He's going to be solid, I guess, in the middle of Ryan's defense. So watch out for him. Here's something I found really interesting when I was going and looking at the snaps played on PFF was that no other linebackers on their roster have played any snaps. Literally, 2020 and Alshire have played every single snap at linebacker. So, in my opinion, I think it is if Coach KO comes up with a really kind of expert game plan to make these guys just run a ton throughout the game, I think we have a chance to really wear them down and take advantage of them in the fourth quarter. So look out for that. I think that there's some coaching opportunities in this game that I think we have an opportunity to really exploit some weaknesses on this Houston roster. Okay, so at corner, this, along with, I mean, they're looking really good at the skill positions because in addition to their receivers, if you go take a look at their corners, they've got Lassiter, who they just drafted this year, and Derek Stingley, who they drafted last year. That is a great young pair of corners. Those guys are both very, very good. And so I think it needs to be said that Darnold needs to be very, very careful about throwing at these guys. Although, again, here is another instance where literally no other corners on the roster have even played one snap. It has been Lassiter and Stingley playing every single corner snap in both games all the way through. So, again, let's wear these guys out. Let's take advantage of them in the fourth quarter because I think, if you're a little bit tired, we can get you. So, let's see. Let's take advantage. Let's get those opportunities. Safety, they're super solid at safety. They have several guys who can play. Petrie is actually, he kind of looks like a rising star. I think this is maybe his third or fourth year in the league. So that's a guy to really, I think he's kind of like their more coverage guy. He might be kind of a big hitter. I can't remember. But one guy I know who is a big hitter is former 49er Jamie Ward, who followed D'Amico over from the 49ers as a free agent to Houston. So he's 33 years old, but he can still play in the box and make big hits. So, look out for Jimmy, man. Duck and cover. Am I right? Okay, so just some of the other guys at safety, because something I've noticed about the way that they kind of design their schemes is that much like Coach Flo, they play a lot of 3 safety sets. And the other guys that are kind of mixing in with those other 2 I mentioned are Bullock and Murray. And again, it looks like they just play a lot of 3 safeties. Kind of exclusively. I mean, when you consider the fact that literally no other linebackers are playing and no other corners are playing, these safeties are coming in and playing a lot of snaps. So they've got a lot of good talent in the secondary. And I'm going to get to this a little bit later, but I think this is a game where we really need to focus on Darnold playing conservatively, taking what the defense gives him, and we need to pound the ball, run the ball. This is a game to win running the ball. All right, so then getting on to their special teams, from my eyes through the first 2 games, and also according to PFF's grades, they look to have a really good coverage unit, both against punts and kickoffs. So this is another case where you don't want to test the momentum of the game and make any risky decisions, right? It's like, let's not try and return a punt when we don't need to. Let's not try and return a kick when we don't need to, because I think these guys will make plays and they'll make us pay for it. We don't want the momentum switching on us just because of kind of a risky special teams play, because I think these guys have the ability to make us pay for it. So let's not lose the field position battle. Let's not lose the turnover battle because of special teams. Play it safe. Don't let these guys get the better of us. And then I've just got a couple of different defensive notes here, and that is this. So coming into this game through the first 2 weeks, the Texans are actually third overall in terms of yardage allowed, okay? But let's look at who they've gone against. Now, I'm not saying that Richardson isn't a good quarterback, because I think he is now and eventually will become a very good one. But let's not forget the fact that he literally only started 4 games last year. So when the Texans and Colts played in week 1, Richardson had all of 4 starts under his belt. Then in week 2, they get Caleb Williams, who had all of 1 start under his belt from the previous week, and we know how that went. So even though their numbers look really good so far through this year, let's look at who they faced, okay? I mean, you would say that the Bears and the Colts are at least 2 kind of middling, at least decent teams. But when you look at the quarterbacks, there really wasn't a lot maybe to be scared of, other than just like pure ability and athleticism. And I kind of just make note of that here, where their strategy was just stack the box, stop the run, right? Just put all emphasis on the run, force these guys to beat you. Williams did not. Richardson did. He got a couple of big plays on Houston. So again, they can be beaten on the back end if you play your cards right. But I don't think they're going to have the luxury in this game. They're going to, if they try and bring an 8th guy down into the box to stop our run, which I think will be very effective, Darnold can burn these guys, especially when you have the best receiver in football. So yeah, there's just going to be so much super interesting just game planning, back and forth, cat and mouse, trickery, just it's going to be a super interesting game, guys. I can't wait to watch it, honestly. So, okay, so we're done talking about the Texans offensively, defensively. I mentioned their special teams. So now it's time to talk about our Vikings, okay? So, first and foremost, Sam Darnold, the key to the game, right? He's the quarterback. He's got to play clean. No turnover-worthy plays, please, okay? Let's have a turnover-free game. We need it. When you want to beat good teams, you gotta play clean. I want him to be conservative in this game. I don't want him, throwing the deep ball a ton. I would rather he take the checkdowns, pick up the first downs, just have long drives. As they say, take what the defense gives you. Just let's play this one conservative. Let's let the running game take this game over. Let your skill guys get the yak, right? Let them get the ball in their hands. Let them make the plays. Sam just needs to play clean and smart in this game. Like I've mentioned several times already, we win this game if we dominate in the running game. We wear down their older and overused defensive roster. We tire them out with long, time-consuming drives, control the time of possession, keep C.J. Stroud off the field. That is the way you win this game, okay? And again, just like I mentioned before, offensive line communication. D'Amico Ryans is going to try and come up with some creative mismatches. He's going to try and get some of his best pass rushers on some of our worst pass rush offensive linemen. And so if he pulls that off and he puts Darnold into bad situations where he then does have those turnover-worthy plays, then the Texans have us at a disadvantage. So we need run game, offensive line, hugely important in this game. The tight ends, just like I mentioned kind of way back at the beginning of the show, Tonyan getting snaps over Munt is something that I want to see. I think that Tonyan could have a really key part in this game. Obviously, we haven't seen him since, I think, like spring mini camp, before training camp even started, because he had those back spasms. But the word on the street was that in those mini camps, he looked great as a receiver in particular. And so I think he just gives Darnold another option, another threat, a guy who can run the seam, a guy who can turn around, run a little hook route or whatever it is and get those first downs. I think he could be a really big part of the passing game in this game in particular, and I don't know if the Texans will really be expecting it. So I'd love to see Tonyan get a little bit more play than Munt in this one. We'll see. Strategy, again, it's like I repeat myself a lot, I know, but I lean heavily on the run game to the left. Expose Edwards up the middle, expose Anderson to the left. I mean, Anderson's super light. I think he's like 245. So, yes, he's an amazing pass rusher, but he's a light guy. He can get pushed around. Edwards can get pushed around. Hunter is solid, but not spectacular. Futakasi, or Fatukasi, or however you pronounce that guy's name. He's just kind of middle of the road. So it's like, they're not really, for me, moving the needle with any one particular guy on the defensive line in terms of stopping the run. So it can be taken advantage of. 2020, I think, is really good, again, as a run defending linebacker. But if you just like force that guy to run all game and smash heads all game, and then if our guys can get into the second and third levels and force those guys in the secondary to just be making tackles, you're gonna wear them down. You're gonna wear them down. The snaps start building up, and eventually at the end of the game, if it's still close, those are the moments when maybe Darnold can take a shot and we can get some big plays and kind of close it out. So I really look forward to it. Again, this team is going to be so great. Okay, so for our linebackers, right? So Ivan Pace, we know he is out. I am very, very concerned if Brian Asamoah gets snaps in this game. I don't think he will. I think that Flores knows better than that. I think he's going to play more Smith and Metellus in kind of more of up in the box on a linebacker role, or maybe just go with Cashman by himself. But if Asamoah finds his way into the game, Asamoah and Cashman together playing the run, don't love it. Asamoah in coverage against running backs, tight ends, don't love it. Hopefully Asamoah is just playing special teams again. Okay, the secondary. This is really important for the secondary. It's a veteran group. I think they understand this. They have to minimize the big plays. I think that they're definitely going to be looking for big chunks down the field. I think Nico Collins and Tank Dell will be looking to take advantage of our guys down the field. Obviously, Stroud will be looking for it. Hopefully, our pass rush doesn't give them enough time to even look at those routes developing down the field, and they'll have to check the ball down a lot. But I don't want our veteran secondary. I just need them, don't play reckless, be smart. Especially, I think Cam Bynum plays a really, really important role in this game. He's going to be, especially if you're going to be bringing Metellus and Smith up, you're going to need Bynum. He's going to be kind of like in a solo high, probably by himself a lot in this game. He in particular needs to have a very, very good, smart game for us and keep Stroud from hitting some of those long, deep balls. So, Cam Bynum, we need you in this one. And then I talked about this a little bit earlier, again, repeating myself, but it needs to be mentioned again. Please don't leave Byron Murphy by himself on Diggs all game long, because if you do that, I think that Diggs can have a big day. And again, I'm not saying that Murphy is terrible or anything, but I just think that Diggs, in terms of just talent and his ability to, with his footwork and his route running, to get open, and Stroud's ability to hit him, in those small windows, I think that Diggs can really take advantage. So let's watch out for that matchup. We want our guys on the edges to just play smart on the outside. I think that Houston's going to really try to take advantage of their speed. Okay, and although I think that our defense actually is pretty fast, I think that their offense is just a little bit faster. So they're going to try and take advantage of that. And we just need to be disciplined, watch out for those creative plays. And I, for one, am very, very glad we have a guy like Van Gee on our defense, because I think he's one of the smartest edge rushers going. I've pointed him out on several occasions through the first 2 weeks that he plays every facet of this game about as smart as you can possibly play it. So having him on defense and being ready for this kind of a matchup, I can't wait to see what Van Gee does out there on the field. When it comes to defending the run in this one, so it's going to be super, super important. Just like, again, I mentioned before, we need to hold down that Houston running game, because if you don't, and Stroud gets some clean pockets, he's going to start hitting some big balls. So the defensive line needs to have a really good game defending the run, because although these two running, whatever running backs they have playing, they're not game breakers like Joe Mixon, but they're still NFL caliber running backs, and if they get past the defensive line in the second level, they can make plays, they can break off chunk runs. So the defensive line needs to just not even give them the chance to get that far. Just get some TFLs, hold the line, stuff those guys at the line of scrimmage, Man, I'm really hoping LDR gets in this game. I can't wait to see him play. I would love to see him and Taki next to each other. That would just bring me so much joy. Oh man, there's so much to look forward to. This game is freaking juicy. It is so juicy. This is going to be a good one. And then just once more talking about special teams. No risky returns, no mistakes. And then as I talked about Fairbairn and how much respect I have for him as a kicker and how much I wanted us to go after him, Reichard needs to match him. Okay, so if Fairbairn's going to be out there kicking, 50-yard field goals and making them, then when Reichard gets his opportunities, he needs to make them. And that goes back to when you want to beat good teams, you have to match them. You have to outplay them. And this is one of those areas where they have a great kicker. We need to match that with some great kicking of our own. Okay. So I'm actually kind of running a little bit short here tonight. I'm at 45 minutes. I thought I was going to ramble on a little bit more, but there is just a little bit of Viking news, just some, as I would say, news, information, opinions, nuggets, that kind of thing that just are attached to this game that I kind of want to talk about. Let me see if I have this set up. Whoops. Let me bring this over here. Sorry, pardon me for just a moment. Okay, so I'm still on cam. Let's bring the spreadsheet back up. Okay, so we've got the biggest story, right, is Stephon Diggs and Danielle Hunter and their return to US Bank Stadium. I know there's been talk about whether or not the fans should or should not boo Stephon Diggs, I think, or even Danielle Hunter at this point, but the way Diggs kind of asked his way out of Minnesota, in hindsight, I can kind of understand it. And I do think that Spielman tried to do him dirty by sending him to Buffalo, because I thought that he was just going to be in a wasteland there. Nobody saw Josh Allen coming, maybe except Buffalo. And so Stephon really thrived there. And then, he kind of got his way out of there. And now he's with Houston. I think I think maybe his personality is a little bit overblown. I mean, obviously, when you moved on from two teams who or at least, decent contending type teams, it does make you raise an eyebrow. But I just think that Stephon had so many great moments with the Vikings. I just think it would be kind of disingenuous for the fan base to boo him at this point, along with Danielle. I heard that because they're focusing more on is it Bobby Brown, I believe, the old defensive back who's going to get into the Ring of Honor, they're going to focus more on his day, so they're not going to be doing any like highlight reels or anything like that for Diggs and Hunter. But I think at the very least the fans can show their support. So for those of you going to the game, hey, give Diggs, give Hunter a huge round of applause. Just thank them for their time in Minnesota, right? Okay. So I love the jersey options, and so far through 2 weeks, I've loved how the jerseys have looked. I think we flip-flopped, right, the purple from the pants to the tops. In this one, and I'm actually going to bring it up over here. Let's bring up the browser. Oh, okay. Well, I'm not getting it. No, I'm not getting it. So anyway, all I can see is my spreadsheet. Maybe if I lower him? No, he's not showing up. Here, let me see if I can change. There it is. Oh, it's not sized properly. All right, that's good enough, I guess. Let's transition. You can take a look at this. This is what our guys will be wearing. Actually, I'm going to transition back simply because I'm not sure if my mic was working, because normally I have a little camera in the corner, so I don't have that set up properly. I apologize for that. But you got a quick sneak peek at it. That's what our guys will be wearing tomorrow, with the yellow fringe around the numbering, with the purple top. And so it's just so slick looking. I love it so much. This is actually my favorite jersey out of all of them, so I can't wait to see them play in those tomorrow. But just to kind of wrap it up, I'm going to be a little short of an hour on this one. As a matter of fact, though, funnily enough, I had wanted to do another show earlier in the week, which I know that's kind of happening to me a lot. But I am actually going to do 2 shows tonight. So right after this one, I'm going to take a small break. I'm going to come back and record another one where I go over like picks and more NFL-centric stuff than Viking-centric stuff. So I'm going to be up late tonight, but it's okay because you don't need sleep when the Vikings are playing, right? Okay, so I did notice this. This was a super interesting note for me. So before they signed Tooley, the linebacker, they had actually tried out 4 other linebackers earlier in the week, most notably Quan Alexander, who's kind of like a guy who's been around a while. He's actually a guy I remember back when he became a free agent. I think he was going from San Francisco and he ended up signing with New Orleans. That was a guy that I had on my radar that I really wanted. So he's kind of bounced around a little bit. I would have loved to have seen us sign him, but what it says to me is that I think that we are actively looking at replacing Brian Asamoah on the field. He's clearly not breaking through on the depth chart to get any snaps on defense. And then, as I pointed out in last week's episode on special teams, he plays out of control. He makes mistakes. I just don't know if Brian has any more time left on this team. And so I think they are actively looking at replacing him. That's what I took away from those tryouts. You could say, oh, no, it was about pace and the injury. But, I mean, it's like, no, I don't think so. Anyway, kind of just one last note about the game itself, simply because coming out of the 49er game, there was a contingent of people who were upset that the win wasn't prettier or that they didn't score in those situations when they were in the red zone. And that they didn't run up the score on a team like the 49ers. And it's like, well, guys like Nick Bosa and Fred Warner exist, right? And they are all pros for a reason. Okay, there are players on the other side as well. So my point is, winning ugly is okay. It's what good teams do, okay? So, yeah, the win against the 49ers was a little bit ugly. We got the win. We beat a really good team. That's all that matters at the end of the day. Now, it does matter, yes, when you have a team like the 2022 team, which all of the data and even our eyeballs told us this team is fool's gold. They are not who we think they are, even though the record tells us otherwise. We knew something was up with that team and that it was going to end badly, and it did. That we don't feel that this time around. That's not the case this time around. This team looks legit. So when you have a legit team, but you need to win a couple of games ugly against good teams, when you're going head to head and you're just battling it out, and best team, one team comes out on top, even though maybe both teams deserved it or earned it because they both played their hearts out. It's okay to win games like that when you have a team like this. So we have real talent. Just keep piling up the W's, even if they are ugly. It doesn't matter. So we are going to wrap up this first show. I only hit about 52, 53 minutes. It's like, hey, I'm trying to give you a Vikings hour. I'm giving you a little bit of a Vikings almost an hour. So anyway, we'll get it ironed out going forward, right? But it's the best we can do for tonight. So, as you know, as I always say at the end of every episode, is this: play vicious, be victorious. Peace.